What happens when a former Trump official walks straight into the lion's den and walks out with the crowd on his side? This isn't just a fiery TV moment, it's a full-blown media ambush turned upside down. You're about to witness the exact moment when Kash Patel silences the room, flips the narrative, and forces the view to face questions they've never had to answer. Live on national TV. Stick around until the end, because the final question he asks, it doesn't just shake the table, it cracks the foundation. And trust me, they did not see it coming. Before we dive in, if you believe in real, unfiltered conversations that challenge the mainstream, smash that like button to boost this message. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because moments like this, they don't happen often, and you won't want to miss the next one. Kash Patel didn't just walk into the view, he walked straight into the crossfire. The producers wanted fireworks. The hosts were ready with sharpened notes. And the audience? They came expecting a takedown. But what nobody expected was what happened next. As the studio doors opened and Patel stepped onto the stage, you could feel the shift in the air. That electric charge just before a storm. Whoopi leaned in with that signature, unreadable stare. Joy Behar murmured something to Sunny Hostin, eyes never leaving Patel, as if they were sizing up a political opponent, not a daytime guest. This wasn't going to be a feel-good morning chat. This was war, wrapped in smiles. And yet, Patel was unshaken. No smug grin, no defensive body language, just focused, calm composure. The kind you see from someone who knows they're walking into a trap, but isn't afraid of it. The opening minutes were civil. Too civil. Talk of national security, his FBI background, but you could hear the tension in the tight laughter, the brittle smiles. The real battle hadn't started yet. And then came the shift. You've said some controversial things about media accountability, Whoopi began, her tone flat but pointed. Some say you're flirting with censorship. Where do you draw the line between free speech and control? The studio quieted. The audience leaned in. Cameras zoomed. Patel didn't blink. I support the First Amendment, he replied, steady and deliberate. But that doesn't mean we ignore deliberate misinformation. Freedom without responsibility isn't liberty. It's chaos. A flicker ran across Joy's face. Sunny sat up straighter. They had expected deflection, instead they got control. The audience wasn't clapping yet, not openly, but the energy in the room was changing. Patel wasn't defending, he was framing. Then came the gloves-off moment. But who decides what counts as misinformation? Sunny asked, sharper now. Some say you've pushed narratives that weren't factual. This is where most guests get nervous, stumble, retreat. But not Patel. That's the exact conversation we should be having, he said. Not shouting matches, not labels, actual uncomfortable dialogue like this. The hosts had prepared for a battle of talking points, but what they got instead was a man flipping the format, turning interrogation into introspection. And right then, something started to shift. The crowd murmured, the hosts blinked, and the show for a brief moment lost control of the conversation. The air in the studio had thickened. What started as a strategic ambush was slowly becoming something unplanned, something dangerous, a live unraveling. And Patel? He wasn't just surviving, he was taking ground. Sunny's next question came fast, more direct now, less commentary, more cross-examination. Let's talk about your time in the Trump administration, she said, her voice edged with precision. You've defended controversial actions, attacked media institutions, pushed claims that were politically charged. Are you saying you're above distortion yourself? The studio stirred. It wasn't a question, it was a trap dressed as one. Patel looked at her, not with defiance, but with surgical calm. No notes, no earpiece, no flinch. I'm saying no one should be above accountability, he replied. Not me, not you, not even this network. A ripple went through the audience, soft laughter from a few, nervous silence from others. The hosts shifted in their seats. Then Whoopi fired her first real shot. That's a bold claim, she said, her voice cool. Are you accusing this show of spreading misinformation? Every media outlet has at some point, he replied flatly. The difference is how you respond when you're wrong. What matters isn't the mistake. It's the silence that follows. Boom. That was it. A truth most won't say on air, said on their air. Joy slammed her palm on the table, leaning in. Let's not pretend we're all the same, she snapped. We have standards, integrity. We don't push conspiracy theories. Patel's reply came like a knife wrapped in velvet, and yet millions of Americans believe they've been misled, not by fringe websites, but by trusted names. That is what breaks trust. Not fake news, but real silence when it matters. That line cut deeper than anything so far, because it wasn't a political jab, it was a mirror, and the audience saw it too. Sonny tried to shift the terrain again. You were part of politically motivated investigations. Do you regret that? No, he answered without hesitation. Because I followed facts, not applause, and facts don't care who they make uncomfortable. Whoopi leaned back now. Less assertive, more curious. You do realize how that sounds, right? Like you're painting yourself as some truth-teller hero? Patel didn't miss a beat. I'm not asking to be painted as anything, he said. I'm asking for fairness. If we can grill public servants, we can grill the media too. The audience leaned in harder. Phones started recording, a few scattered claps. The control room probably whispered in the host's earpieces, "Regain control." But it was too late. The balance had already tipped. They weren't asking the questions anymore. He was setting the tone. Joy jumped back in, exasperated. You come in here acting like a victim, but you worked for someone who attacked journalists daily. I'm not a victim, Patel said, voice steady. I'm just not afraid to say what millions are thinking. Trust in the media is broken, and it didn't break itself. Silence. Not scripted, not planned, and not something The View could laugh off with a commercial break. By now, the studio didn't feel like a talk show set anymore. It felt like a chess match on a minefield. One wrong move, and the illusion of control could explode. And the hosts? They were starting to realize they weren't the ones holding the board anymore. Joy leaned forward again, her tone no longer performative. It was personal now. You keep talking about accountability, she said, voice low. But do you regret anything you've said? Anything you wish you could take back? It wasn't just a question. It was a dig, a plea for a crack in the armor. Patel didn't flinch. I regret how quickly the truth gets buried, he said, not the fact that I've kept digging for it. The audience buzzed, not loud, but alert. Whoopi raised her eyebrow, cocked her head. That sounds rehearsed. No, he said calmly, it sounds honest, and that's exactly why it's uncomfortable. There it was again, flipping the accusation into introspection. A verbal judo move that took the punch and turned it into power. Sonny stepped in, firmer now. But you've made serious claims about the media, the FBI, even the government. Don't you think that just creates more division? This was a trap disguised as a concern. She was teeing him up to sound like a provocateur. But Patel saw it. Division doesn't come from hard truths, he said. It comes when one side is allowed to ask everything, and the other side is told to shut up. That line sliced through the room like a blade. The audience reaction wasn't just polite anymore, it was emotional. Applause, nods, whispers. Someone even muttered, "That's true," under their breath, just loud enough to be picked up by the mics. Joy narrowed her eyes. So here we go again, you're the victim. No, he said almost softly. I'm the messenger, and you can shoot me all day, but it won't erase the message. Bang! The room tilted. That wasn't spin, that was strategy with soul. Whoopi leaned in now, voice dropping in tone. Off script, unguarded. Let me ask you something real, she said. You talk about trust, but you worked for an administration that lied. How do you separate yourself from that? No hesitation. I served the Constitution, Patel said. Not a man, not a party. I followed the facts, even when they led to places no one wanted to go. He wasn't defending a legacy, he was defending an idea that truth should never belong to a side. Sonny tried a new angle. So then what's the takeaway here, she asked, almost exasperated. You come here, accuse us of bias, defend your past. What do you want people to walk away with? That you're the hero? That we're the villains? He paused, and you could feel the silence stretch. No, he said. I want people to walk away thinking. Just that. Think about what they hear, who's saying it, why they're saying it. I'm not asking them to believe me. I'm asking them to question everyone, including me. That line cracked the ceiling. The audience didn't just applaud. They stood, not all at once, but enough to change the chemistry of the room. It wasn't a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. Whoopi leaned back, her face unreadable for once. You're good, she said quietly. I'll give you that. Patel smiled, just slightly. I'm not here to be good, he replied. I'm here to be honest. And just like that, bam, The soundbite of the episode was born. It would go viral within the hour. It would dominate Twitter and flood reels. But the show wasn't done, because the next topic? Patriotism. And who gets to define it? That's when the gloves would truly come off. The studio lights still shone bright, but the mood had shifted. What started as a routine daytime segment had turned into something raw, unfiltered, almost revolutionary, and it was about to get personal. Joy squared her shoulders, trying to reset the rhythm. Her voice tightened. "You talk a big game about patriotism, about the Constitution," she said. "But how can you call yourself a patriot while tearing down the very institutions that hold this country together?" This wasn't a question. It was a warning. Tread lightly. But Patel didn't tread. He stepped forward. "That's the difference," he said, eyes locked, "between loyalty and blind faith. I believe in our institutions enough to fix them. You believe in them enough to ignore when they're broken." Silence, sharp and heavy. A few gasps rippled across the studio. Someone in the crowd let out a soft, "wow." It was no longer politics, it was surgical truth, uncomfortable and impossible to dodge. Then Patel leaned forward. "You want to talk about patriotism?" he said, voice rising just slightly now. Not shouting, but unignorable. "It's not about waving a flag, it's about saying we can do better, even if it costs you something, especially if it costs you something." The audience wasn't clapping yet. They were listening, really listening. Whoopi tried to deflect, but not fast enough. "So who decides?" she asked. "Who defines what better means?" "The people," Patel replied instantly. "Not pundits, not politicians, and not hosts at this table. The people who go to work every morning, pay their taxes, and feel like no one's listening anymore." That line detonated quietly in the room. And then it happened. A woman, not a guest, not a plant, stood up from the third row, wearing a faded denim jacket. No sign, no agenda. She didn't shout, she didn't perform. She just said loud enough for the mics to catch. Finally, someone saying it. Boom! The camera didn't pan to her. The producers didn't cue applause, but it didn't matter. Because the energy had shifted again. The conversation was no longer about the view. It was about the viewers. Joy blinked. Sunny stared. Whoopi was still. The control they were used to, gone. Because in that moment, the show wasn't hosting a guest anymore. It was being held accountable, live. Patel didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded to the woman. A gesture that said, "I hear you," and then he pivoted. "You asked what I'm saying," he turned back to the hosts. "I'm saying power doesn't just come from who holds office, it comes from who holds the microphone." Sunny sat up. "We're not lawmakers," she said quickly. "We don't write policy." Patel didn't raise his voice. "But you write perception, and sometimes that's even more powerful." Whoopi crossed her arms, defensive now. "So now we're responsible for how people feel?" Patel didn't blink. "No, you're responsible for what you say, just like I am. The difference is, when I screw up, there's an investigation. When the media screws up, it's a new segment the next day, and it's gone." That was it. No applause yet, just impact. It wasn't showbiz anymore. It was something closer to a courtroom. And the jury was watching from couches across America. Joy tried to redirect again. "Don't act like you're not part of the same system," she said. "You shape narratives too." "I've seen it from the inside," Patel responded. "I've also seen how it gets abused. By both sides." Then Sunny hit with a curveball. "So why come here at all? You knew what this would be." He looked around the studio, the lights, the cameras, the crowd. "Because this room? This is where a lot of people decide what they believe, and they deserve to hear something that wasn't cleared by a PR team." And then he flipped it again. "Let me ask you something." Silence. Whoopi gave a slight nod. "Go on." "You've asked about my loyalties, my past, my mistakes. Now I'm asking, what's your responsibility to the public? When you know something's wrong, but it fits the narrative, do you say it anyway? Or do you stay quiet?" It wasn't hostile. It wasn't even rhetorical. It was just real. And that made it hit harder than anything else that morning. Joy opened her mouth. No words came. Sunny glanced to Whoopi. Whoopi looked toward the control room. For once, there was no answer. Because it wasn't a question for them. It was a question for all of us. "I'm not saying you're bad people," Patel added gently. "I'm saying you have power. And power, without reflection, becomes control." The studio didn't clap. Not yet. Because that line wasn't built for applause. It was built for the pause that followed. And in that pause, You could hear the walls shake. The studio was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the calm before something breaks. Everyone at the table could feel it. They weren't dealing with a pundit anymore. They were dealing with a man who knew where the cracks were and wasn't afraid to show them. And then Joy asked the one question they were all dancing around. Let's be honest. You've said the media's biased? Do you think this show has a political agenda? Patel didn't even blink. Yes. That one word hit like a gavel. No disclaimers, no sidestepping, just a direct hit. Joy blinked, stunned by the bluntness. Sunny leaned in fast. So just because we have progressive values you think we're biased? Patel shook his head slowly. No, I think bias happens when facts are filtered through ideology. And here, that happens all the time. The crowd murmured again. Not cheering, processing. Whoopi snapped back. We're not going to pretend both sides are the same when one has pushed conspiracy after conspiracy. I'm not asking you to pretend, Patel said, firm. I'm asking you to apply the same standard. If you call out disinformation on one side, have the courage to do it when it's your own. That was it. The moment no host wanted said out loud, said plainly, on their own stage. Joy leaned in, voice rising. Give us an example. Patel didn't flinch. He came ready. The Hunter Biden laptop story. It was real, it was accurate, but it was dismissed, banned, and labeled a hoax. This show never corrected the record. Not once. You could feel the impact of that example hit the room like a wave. Sunny tried to cut in. That story was unverified at the time. No, he said. It was inconvenient at the time, and that's the problem. Facts shouldn't depend on timing. The audience didn't clap, they didn't need to. They were staring, wide-eyed, because the truth wasn't just being spoken, it was being proven. Whoopi's tone dropped sharper now. So you're accusing us of suppressing it? I'm saying this environment punished anyone who questioned the narrative, and when the truth came out, no one paid a price, no one took responsibility. Joy slammed her pen down. What do you want? An apology? No, he said. I want transparency. I want people to be trusted with all the facts, not just the ones that pass an ideological filter. And then he paused, just for a moment. The next words hit harder than anything so far. That's not a Republican thing. That's not a Democrat thing. That's freedom. The audience erupted, but this time it wasn't applause out of habit. It was applause out of recognition, because somewhere deep down, people felt it. They hadn't been given the whole story. Whoopi leaned back, arms crossed, not defiant anymore, just recalculating. Patel's voice softened, but carried more weight than ever. When the media acts like a filter, instead of a mirror, it stops being journalism. It becomes influence. Boom. There it was, the shot that broke the format. The conversation had gone nuclear, not because it was angry, but because it was honest. And the most terrifying thing for power is when someone tells the truth with calm clarity. The hosts looked around, unsure where to go next. The cameras kept rolling, but they were no longer in control. And just when they thought it was over, Whoopi asked the last question they had left. So what's the solution then? And Kash Patel's answer wouldn't just go viral. It would haunt the closing credits. The room had shifted. The tension, still thick. But the panic? That was new. Patel had dismantled the format without raising his voice. And now, with just minutes left in the show, the co-hosts were grasping for control. Whoopi took a breath. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was measured. All right, you've made your point. You've said the media is broken, that we're biased, that people should question what they hear. So what now? What's your solution? It was a classic pivot. Try to land the plane before it crashes. But Patel wasn't interested in soft landings. He looked across the table, one last scan of the faces that had challenged him from the opening minute, and then he answered. My solution is conversation. Not monologues, not echo chambers, but real uncomfortable face-to-face dialogue, like this. He paused, just long enough for it to land. I don't hate the press. I don't fear it. I just want it to do better. The audience, now fully locked in, didn't move. You could hear the click of a pen from the third row. Sunny sat forward again, eyebrows raised. That sounds nice, she said. But let's be honest. Most of what you've said today, it'll be clipped, edited, twisted. Patel nodded without flinching. Probably, but people aren't stupid. They can tell when something's been manipulated, and they're tired of it. And then, he did something no guest ever does. He looked directly at the camera, Not the hosts, not the audience. You. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to remind you, you're allowed to have one. If this conversation is hitting different for you, if you think more people need to hear this kind of raw, unfiltered truth, smash that like button to push it out. Drop a comment if something Patel said made you stop and think. And don't forget to subscribe, because moments like this, they don't happen often, but we make sure you never miss them. That was it. That was the quote. The one that would be clipped, memed, tweeted, rewatched. Not because it was explosive, but because it was liberating. For the first time, the hosts didn't speak. Joy Behar tossed her cue cards aside, silent. Sunny leaned back, arms crossed, but not in defiance. In reflection, Whoopi stared toward the back wall, not the cameras. They all knew it. This wasn't a TV moment. It was a mirror. And then, one last question. From off stage, from a producer. Quiet, unsure. Do we still roll the closing? But it didn't matter, because the show was still rolling, even after it ended. The music played. The cameras pulled wide, the logo faded, but something strange happened next. The audience didn't leave. Instead, they began walking toward the stage. One by one. Quietly. Respectfully. They didn't come to protest. They didn't come to fight. They came to thank him. To say things like, I don't agree with everything you said, but thank you for saying what no one else will. No sound bites. No slogans. Just truth. A producer whispered into a headset, should we cut the feed? Another answered, no. Let it roll. This is the story now. Whoopi re-entered, passed by without a word. Joy stood at a distance, watching the line of people. Sunny nodded politely, still processing. They weren't the story anymore. He was. Because Kash Patel didn't come to win an argument. He came to reclaim a voice, not just his own, but the millions who never get invited to speak at all. When he left the studio, the hashtags were already trending. But the real moment? The one that would echo? Wasn't on camera. It was after the cameras stopped rolling, when people stepped forward, unprompted, to say, thank you, for not performing, for just telling the truth. And that's what scared them most. Because if this happened once, what happens when the next guest refuses to play along? What you just witnessed wasn't just a conversation, it was a confrontation with comfort, a challenge to the script, and a reminder that the truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs a chance to speak. Kash Patel didn't come to dominate the room. He came to ask the one question the media rarely asks itself. What happens when you're wrong and no one holds you accountable? This wasn't about who won the debate. It was about who's finally willing to listen. And if that resonated with you, if you felt that shift, we ask just one thing: subscribe. Like. Drop your thoughts below. Let's keep conversations like this alive. Because truth doesn't belong to the powerful. It belongs to the people brave enough to ask better questions. And that includes you. Thank you, and see you in the next one.